The last thing that I remember was falling backwards, and when I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital room with tubes down my throat. I was in such discomfort, but I couldn't even move or shout. I couldn't feel anything else. What happened to me? I've always gotten really high grades at school, but somehow I still manage to get into trouble at school because I tend to fall asleep in class. It's always done the same way too. I'll accidentally fall asleep, then the next thing I know, I hear the cane hitting my desk. I look up to my teacher who is pointing out the door for me to go. I walk with her outside the classroom, turn towards the wall. It never gets easier, and even if I try my hardest not to fall asleep, I just can't help but pass out. Whenever it's time to go to bed at home, I end up staying up all night, naming all the dots that I find on my ceiling. I know what you're thinking. Why not ask my parents for help? Well, I really just never felt comfortable asking them. My father is a neurosurgeon, and my mother is an anesthesiologist. They're always busy, and I didn't want to give them anything else to worry about on top of their already busy schedule. As long as I kept my grades up, I felt that it was fine, as 1 or 2 cane strikes to the back wasn't that bad. One day at school, while I was eating lunch with my friend, Nui, my other friend, Longway, came to join us. He was acting a little different than usual, so I asked him what was wrong. Then he handed me a plastic bag with a couple of tablets inside. I looked at Nui with confusion in my eyes when Longway began to explain what they were and what they were used for. He told me that his dad was seeing a sleep therapist because he had also had trouble sleeping, and the doctor had given him medication to help. Longway was tired of seeing me getting in trouble in class for falling asleep, so he took some of the tablets from his father to give it to me. I was hesitant at first since taking medications that are not yours is risky, but it had been such a long time since I had a good night's sleep that I agreed and stuffed them in my backpack. I thanked him and joked that maybe I could finally catch up on my piano piece that I needed to memorize for the school orchestra concert happening in a few weeks. He laughed and told me he would bring me more when I ran out. That night, right after brushing my teeth, I took one of the tablets. They weren't very big, so I swallowed it easily, and it didn't take long for it to start working. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of breakfast. I was really drowsy, barely able to keep my eyes open. When I went to sit at the table, my mom looked at me with a worried expression and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine and that I was really tired from a long week at school, but I could tell that my 2 older brothers knew something was up, so I had tried to be very careful. For the next couple of weeks, I took the medication without anyone finding out, and I felt great. And my teacher seemed happy with the change. But after the 3rd week, I started feeling sick. My stomach started to ache, and I was just always tired. I felt worse and worse as each day went by, so I started taking more of them thinking they were not working, and that was a huge mistake. On Thursday of the 4th week, I could barely function. I felt so bad that I skipped breakfast and could barely stand on my 2 feet. I grabbed my backpack and walked out the door with all of my brothers like usual to head to school. Mingyu and Tengfei ran ahead, while Bojing and I kept a steady pace behind. We walked in silence for a while until Bojing broke the silence. He asked me if I was nervous about my piano solo today. I quickly spun around, almost losing my balance to face him, eventually staring back forward with a blank face. I had completely forgotten about it. Panicked and stunned, I just nodded as if I didn't forget. We continued on the rest of the way to school, and he kept giving me words of encouragement, telling me I was going to do great. I thanked him, and as I was about to walk through the gate, he quickly grabbed my shoulders to face him. He told me that I hadn't been acting right, and that he knew something else was wrong. I wanted to tell him everything, but I didn't. I just said that I was sick and that I could handle it on my own. He sighed and gave me a hug. I told him I loved him and that I would see him at the school concert. The day was a blur, and I can't properly remember what happened until it became time for the concert. Longwei and Nui were standing next to me backstage. I looked at them both, white as a sheet of paper, telling them that I didn't think I could play. Nui looked concerned and agreed that I didn't look well enough to play, but reminded me how big this was on my final grade. I sighed and told him the truth, that I had taken 6. Longwei looked worried, but to us, 6 didn't seem like a lot since they were so small. Before we could say anything else, it was time to start, and our teacher pushed us on stage. We all took our places, and the concert began. It was going better than I expected. Then came my solo. I held my breath as I played it, and I was relieved when I saw that I had only a couple more chords to go. But I never got that far. Near the end of my piece, my vision started to blur, and my hearing became muffled. Then, all of a sudden, I felt a sharp feeling in my stomach. I stopped playing, grabbed my stomach, and tried to take a deep breath, but I couldn't breathe. The last thing I remember was the feeling of me falling backward. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital room with tubes running down my throat as I sat motionless in excruciating discomfort. I was too weak to sit up, but from where I was, I could see Mother, Father, and Mingyu sitting on a couch just outside my room sleeping, while Teng Fei and Bojing were sleeping in chairs with their heads resting on the end of my bed. I started to tremble and cry silently when I began to gag, and a bunch of the machines I was hooked up to started beeping loudly, which woke up everyone. The doctors came running in. I could hear my mother start crying, and they put something in my IV and pulled out the tube. Then they put an oxygen mask on my face, and I passed out from the medicine. When I woke up again, I was alone. Not a doctor or nurse in sight. I was stronger this time, so I sat up slowly. My stomach and my throat were sore, but I felt better. Then I heard the door to my room open. Bojing came in with a tray of tea, but when he saw me sitting up, he froze, dropped the tray on the floor, and ran to my side, giving me a huge bear hug. He started yelling for the rest of the family, and when they all ran in, I was covered with hugs and tears. After a while, the doctor came in and asked me what happened, and I told him everything. I was having trouble sleeping, the tablets, and how I felt. Then he explained what was going on. The night before the concert, I had taken too many, and it had caused my breathing to become dysfunctional, which sent me into cardiac arrest. It was a lot to take in all at once, but I understood how it was all my fault. The doctor then broke the news that my heart was damaged and that I needed immediate surgery to fix it. I looked around to see that my family was smiling. They were just happy that I was alive. I apologized and we all cried for a while until it was time for me to go. I was discharged about a week and a half later, and now everything is back to normal. I finally got my sleeping problem fixed, and I definitely don't hide anything from my family anymore. I was left with a scar on my chest as a reminder to trust my family and to stay away from medications that are not mine.